get my docs up so I can see the chat technically. So, good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you've had a lovely time since the last time I streamed. I'm gonna try to be a bit easier on my voice than yesterday because I want to make it through all the commanders. In case you don't know, this is basically me doing research for a YouTube video series that I do where I look at the most interesting commanders in a certain color pair. Of course, all of this is very subjective, but yeah. Because I usually have a hard time just, hunkering down and doing stuff when I could be playing video games instead, or be at my local game store. And I also wanted to get into streaming. That's why I tried to get a nice 2-for-1, get some value, and stream the process of what I like to call like speed dating these Golgari commanders. The goal is not to build a deck around these commanders. The goal is to find synergy packages, to find angles at which to approach certain commanders, so that I can then present the viewer of my potential YouTube video with creativity sparking ideas, maybe. So I want to leave some stuff up to the viewer. I just want to get their gears grinding and start their deck building process. I already gave them some tags, all the commanders that we are will tackle today, hopefully, if my voice makes it through. But there's one that I added that is way up higher in the list. You can see all of these are alphabetically sorted. But I had a suggestion yesterday in chat for Black's Vexing Pest. And it is actually a commander I have at home. Look, Mom, we have a commander at home, I guess. And it's very interesting for one reason already. It completely ignoring most of its text box. And that is that it's a flip card, but we've had flip cards before. But additionally, on the backside, it is a sorcery. I believe on Magic Arena, there was a format where you had a signature spell. So you'd have a commander and a signature spell in the same color. Ah, nice to see that you're back. I say just popping in to say hello and look forward to the video. Who knows? I might be back. All right, well, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a wonderful time. And I'll just be doing my thing, and if people pop in, that's nice. This is just for me trying to get the video done. And just to get, a foothold in streaming, because I really want to start streaming, as like just interacting with one viewer yesterday was already not only fun, but it also, you suggested some really good cards. So, yep, whatever you're doing, hope you have a wonderful time and see you around. Yes, so, and we're gonna actually start with the commander you suggested, with Blex, because you made a very, you didn't need to pitch it to me, I was fully on board already, because it's a flip commander, it's a sorcery from the command zone, and that is something that closely resembles whatever the signature spell was that we had in the one arena format that is already dead, probably. I don't play arena anymore. Pests, bats, insects and snakes and spiders get +1/+1. So that's quite the wild assortment of creatures. And a lot of creatures that don't have, let's say, overlapping synergy. But one card immediately comes to mind, and that is the Swarm Yard. I believe that's what it's called. Let's scroll down. That's like the unfortunate thing of adding all of these commanders already, but I figured it might be nicer for the viewer to get like a look ahead. Swarmyard, it taps to regenerate target insect, rat, spider or a squirrel. So it's kind of the perfect land to just slot in. For a 2-color deck, I believe you can fit quite a few of these colorless lands in. I'd say like 3, 4 shouldn't be an issue. And unfortunately, it doesn't regenerate blacks, but it can probably regenerate a bunch of things that you put in your blacks deck. When it dies, you gain 4 life. I think I would mostly ignore this clause. Nothing comes to mind where you can abuse this. On the backside, look at top 5 cards of your library, put any number of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 3 life, and for each card you put into your hand this way. So it's a bit like a library effect, Sylvan library effect. Look at any number, lose 3 for each card you put into your hand this way. For 4 mana, sorcery. This one is interesting. This one is very, very interesting. What I'm tempted to do is to pull up. Let's see. On my second screen, I'm gonna open up this exact deck list, so we can still have it around. I'm working on a better solution for the viewers, so you can always see which commander we're tackling right now. And I also want to do like a speed run kind of thing where you can see which commander we already did, how long we took for them, and what's up next, like a live split, if you will. But I didn't have time between yesterday and today. Let's look for pest, bat, insect, snake, spider. Yes. Let's do it in brackets. And I think we can just combine this with an or, an or, like we're mining. And then we have a selection. That's 450 cards. That is a bit much. Let's do minus rarity common to exclude all the commons. There, voila, we cut it in half. This is something that I can work with. We have a bunch of insect commanders. Insect has gotten a lot more support, right? We've seen Chick. We've seen Amzu. There's more stopped yesterday, which was, it's not Sisei, Hapatra. So insect could be the type you're focusing on, because insect also is a very go wide type strategy. So we could mention more insect cards like Ant Queen. There's just good cards like Arasta of the Endless Web that can fit into a deck like this. I'm gonna look for like keynote cards that I know that stand out, that are relatively new, especially for creature types like this. Old cards are just unplayable. 5 mana 3/3. Tap to get +3/+3. Very defensive cards. Creatures your opponents control can't have +1/+1 counters put on them. What a hate card for casual EDH. I love it. So we might use this commander to also feature, like to just talk about some cool, just generically good insects and bats and stuff. So bat is discard, I'd say. Spider is like reach and anti-flying. I really like Distended Mindbender as a card, but that might be a 1v1 player speaking. Third opponent real civilian. Yep. Very good. Enduring Tenacity, also pretty good. So let's focus on the front side for a bit, but let's not stay too long. Snake. Um, so Kamigawa. Talk about this card. It's a really good card. Discard a creature to return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. There's a bunch of creatures that just return back to your hand. So this might just be like play generically good cards of that creature type. What I think is more interesting though is focusing on the backside. So I won't go that much deeper here. Also because again, like I can't spend infinite time on just one commander because we have so many to get through, especially today. So let's leave it at that. I'm gonna scroll down real quick and see if I recognize any of the cards because usually like I recognize the really good cards. And since we're not looking for insane synergy pieces, but standalone good cards of said creature types, that means, yeah. Wait, you don't see the cards? Oh yeah, I'm really dumb. Thank you so much. This is because I started in a different in a different theme in my OBS. But I'll catch you up to speed. You didn't miss much. We're gonna go back up top, and I'm gonna give you a quick recap. So we're talking Black's Vexing Pest. Thank you so much for the heads up. Other pests, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders you control get +1/+1, and when it dies, you gain for life. But what I find so interesting about this commander is that on the flip side, it is a sorcery, so a sorcery from the command zone. That is a bit of a library, Sylvan library effect. You look at a bunch of cards, 5 in this case, which is a lot, and you can put any number of them into your hand. So it could be 4 mana, draw 5 cards, but you do lose 3 life for each card you put into your hand this way. So the first inclusion was Swarm Yard. You regenerate target insect, rat, spider, or squirrel simply by tapping this land. I think that's like a easy inclusion. And we were looking at some good cards of that type. In regards to the 3-color video, I mean, I'm gonna do the 2-color videos first. Me streaming this is partly because I want to speed the process up. Like if I don't have a set window where I do the research for these commanders, then it takes forever. So yeah, me doing this means we'll get to 3 colors quicker. So first thing, I looked at some standalone good snakes, druids, pests, insects. We can see that's a lot of snakes, by the way. Lotus Cobra just is a good green card. I really like Floral Evoker. It's a new card where you can discard a creature card to put a land from your graveyard into the battlefield, which works really well with Self-Mill. Fanatic of Ronas is just so powerful because it taps for 4 mana if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. I'm actually gonna zoom in a little so you guys can read it better. But what I want to do next, let's give them most impressive ones the tag for blacks that are just standalone good cards. Blight Beetle I also find very interesting. It's just that card that in casual pods will do so much for such little cost. It's just a 2 mana 1/1 protection from green, which is good already, right? There's a lot of green decks running around in casual commander. But creatures your opponents control can't have +1/+1 counters on them. That is just the cherry on top. I assume this will do a lot in your games. Thank you so much, man. Like second live stream, immediately more people. That is very nice of you to show up. Yeah, I really hope that live streaming will like give me even more what I enjoy the most. Like the views and the likes on a YouTube video are nice and all, but what I enjoy the most about YouTube videos and making them is the comments. So like live streaming is kind of, well, comments plus, right? We actually get to have an interaction. Yesterday, one chatter suggested really good cards, which I can then implement into the video, which is like a, a win-win situation. You guys get to give some input, pitch your favorite cards and commanders, and I get to make like more informed, better videos. So I really enjoyed yesterday with just one active chatter. So we'll see where this takes us. Back to blacks though, or rather the search for blacks. I have been very interested in a black-based spell slinger deck. And I have a feeling that having an incredibly powerful card advantage spell, right? This gives you 5 cards for just 1 card that you can repeatedly cast, is super interesting. And honestly, just thinking about it, I am very tempted to do a full deck for Search for Blacks and and give it a try. So the cards I'm thinking about are Strixhaven based. We are thinking Sedgemoor Witch, which makes tokens whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, and Professor Professor Onyx, so Liliana in disguise. We have Liliana at home. These cards are the first payoffs that come to mind. Sorry, Black's being so far down is a bit so far up is a bit annoying because I already added all the other commanders. But Sedgemoor Witch, 3 mana, 3/2, Ward, Menace, and whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 black and green pest. And pests, of course, gain your life when they die. And Professor Onyx, so Liliana, Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Now, there might not be enough support right now for a fully fledged green and black spell slinger deck. But we do have one of the 3 in-universe sets is going to be Strixhaven, right? They're already setting up the story in Lorwyn with the 2 guys. Or I think it's more than just 2 students. So I am positive that we will get more support for black spellslinger strategies. I do have a Killian deck. Let's actually take a quick side note here because I'm really interested in this. I believe I should have a Killian Spellslinger deck, black and green somewhere in here. Yes, and let's see if we find some good black cards for a Spellslinger deck. Okay, so for example, Blood Funnel. Non-creature spells you play cost 2 less to cast, but whenever you play a non-creature spell, you have to counter that spell unless you sacrifice a creature. This is a bit like... Oh, I forgot the name. There's a similar card for creatures that makes them cost 2 less, but they all get -1/-1, which is easier to build around, but I'm confident that black-green especially has enough to make this card work. Unfortunately, white is kind of better at most of these things. But whenever you cast a spell on this guy, every opponent needs to sacrifice a creature. That's interesting. It works better in Killian, which is the commander of this deck. But Kurvek, for example, is a great card. He should already be in my other list, but yes. Toshiro Umezawa. Bushido, whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from play, you may play target instant card in your graveyard, but then of course you have to exile it afterwards, so you can't do broken stuff. I think I featured him in the Mono Black video. He is maybe my favorite Mono Black commander. I really wish I had a deck built around him, but I will admit the strategy is a bit toxic, maybe, but that has never stopped a Mono Blue player like me from doing anything. When you cast a land, play a land or cast a spell, draw a card. That's good, but that's just generically good. And then I just have a bunch of creatures. Okay, so back to Search for Blacks. Again, great card advantage spell. That probably means you also want like cost reducers. There is this Anvil card. What's it called? Semblance Anvil. We're gonna add that as well. Let's look at the new cards we just added. Semblance Anvil. When it enters, for 3 mana, you may exile a non-land card from your hand. And then spells you cast that share a card type with exiled spell exile card costs 2 less to cast. This is always what I look for when I'm building a non-blue based Spellslinger deck, is effects that still make your spells cheaper, but yeah, you can put in any deck. There's a bunch of these. There's a 4-mana card from Ixalan that makes your instants and sorceries cheaper, and there's Cloud Key, which we could also add, I guess. Although, yeah, like, we don't need all of this. When this enters, you just choose either artifact, creature, enchantment, instant, or sorcery, and then the spells cost 1 less. So let's add these 2 blacks, and then I think we're gonna move on. I think I have enough to give a good pitch in the video, and that's always my goal, is not building the entire deck, but like featuring this commander, talking about the front side and how you could play like all of these different creature types, and then mentioning how I find it very interesting that you have an insane card advantage spell, a sorcery from the command zone that you can cast repeatedly, and how you could pair that with different ways to make a black-green based Spellslinger strategy work. I should also probably mention Strixhaven then, because Strixhaven just is the set where this first became a real archetype, at least in my opinion. But let's move to all the commanders that are alphabetically now sorted that we didn't get to yesterday. And the first one is already a great card. It's Hazel of the Root Bloom. 4 mana, 3/5, Squirrel Druid, so from Bloomburrow, Commander, I assume. It taps, you pay to life, and then you tap X untapped tokens you control to add X mana in any combination of colors. Additionally, at the beginning of your end step, you get to create a token that's a copy of target token you control. If that token is a squirrel, instead you create 2 tokens that are copies of it. Let's talk and dissect the first ability. Not all tokens were created equal, and there's some tokens that are just much, much easier to produce. We've seen a bunch of food tokens, or food token creators, especially, I also mentioned this yesterday in yesterday's stream. I think the Lord of the Rings, if you are into Universes Beyond, the Hobbit decks, they did a bunch of food. And in this list already, I've featured a bunch of cards that work really nicely with this first ability. So just have insane amounts of mana from your command zone. I think we can move up just a bit to see cards like... yes. So, of course, another squirrel. You could go full on squirrel, but that's usually not what I like to focus on, because that is like the very first thing that comes to mind, and people that are coming to my videos, I think they look for inspiration, and if you just type in squirrel and put 99 squirrels in your deck, that's not particularly interesting. Not sure if you'd be interested, but if you're looking for ideas, Rachel Weeks from the Command Zone has a deck based around search for blacks. Honestly, great suggestion. I'll put a pin in it. Like, I'll look it up later. Surprisingly, I don't watch a lot of Magic-based content, so always happy for tips. Academy Manufacturer is basically a must in all of these food decks, because food is so easy to produce, but treasures are not, and clues, I mean, clues are not that hard to make, but they're pretty useful, especially if you have insane amounts of mana. So Academy Manufacturer, of course, the first tag we're gonna add. Actually, I need to look up like what was the tag has. So add, change tags, add HAZ. That's a perfect card for a deck like this. What else? We could talk about Gingerbread Cabin again, but think of this in the context of a video. I've already talked about Gingerbread Cabin. I won't show the card on screen again. I might give it a quick mention. The Cabbage Man. I assume the Cabbage Man is from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Personally, I don't talk about Universes Beyond in my videos because it's a very personal choice. And other people are also just, since my personal stance is that I don't like it. Like, I don't care if other people play it, of course. I really don't care. But I'm just not knowledgeable about Universes Beyond cards. Mm, but I assume Cabbage Man makes a bunch of food. Knights of Sweet Wrench, also very good with tokens. It creates a food token. Foods you control have tap, add mana. That's why we're also gonna add Jaheira, because she also makes it so your tokens can add mana. Of course, that's like easy inclusions. All of these cards that we've previously mentioned, I could give a shout out in the video, but let's try to find some new stuff. And I think the new stuff we're gonna find with the second clause. So you get to create a token that's a copy of target token you control. If the token is a squirrel, instead you create 2 tokens that are copies of it. What I'm interested in, of course, is just looking at cards that make big tokens. If you create a copy of a 1/1 squirrel, and you get 2 1/1 squirrels, that's nice. That's a good go white strategy. But cards like Abyssal Harvester are very interesting because they exile target creature card from your graveyard, and then you create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. You always only get to have 1 of those nightmare tokens, but what you could do is like reanimate a an academy manufacturer, which makes it so whenever you create a food, you also get a token, a clue token, and a treasure token. And then using your commander, you could just make multiple copies of that. So instead of going wide with a lot of measly 1/1 tokens, you could reanimate high value targets, make tokens of them, and then multiply those very, very good and expensive tokens instead. That's always a route that you can take. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, create that creature's controller creates a token that's a copy of that creature. Perfect. Wonderful. Great card. Let's see if we can find more stuff that makes high value tokens. So, puts a creature token into play that's a copy of that creature. Okay, that's pretty insane. Whenever a creature card leaves play, remove all tokens with the same name as that creature from the game. That might actually be... That's a crazy card that I really like to talk about. Although it might not end up in an actual 99. It's a card that, makes people think about what is possible with a commander. Formless Genesis, we're gonna look it up real quick. It might show up in the search. I don't know what the text is. Target opponent chooses target creature he or she controls, put a token creature into play and treat it as a copy of that creature. Okay, so you get to copy opponent stuff, but they get to choose. I think that's not good enough. Here we get the 2/2s. This combat damage, create a token that's a copy of Giant Ataphage. Ugh. Yo, that's a Duskmourn card, all right. Of course. God's Pharaoh Gift. I even played with that card, and I believe it was standard. Beginning of combat on your turn, may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Then we have Hazel. We don't need much more. Again, we're looking to showcase stuff. I don't want to find everything that it is to a commander, to a strategy. So let's look at what you suggested. Formless Genesis. Changeling. Kindred Sorcery. Ooh, new cards. I always like to showcase new cards. Create an XX colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling and Death Touch, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. And again, this is why I love doing this live. The card you just suggested is awesome because it's a squirrel and it has retrace even. So, like, thank you so much. Great suggestion. Damn, I'm really benefiting from doing this live because yeah, I only try to spend between 15 and 30 minutes. I think I say it in the description as well, because it's just too many commanders, and I don't want this to take like more than 10 hours just to research. So, thank you. Let's put all of these into Hazel. Dual Nature. I might not end up talking about all of these, but Formless Genesis, definitely gonna get a mention. I believe I'd like to move on because squirrels, I think I already talked about a bit, and then like the food strategies and the squirrel strategy go like hand in hand. Um, and the next one offers something really unique. Because Holgak, I mean, he was a nightmare in modern. I absolutely agree. Like this card in a 1v1 setting is just beyond stupid. Mm, but in Commander, I think it's absolutely fine. 7 mana, 8/8. Avatar, you can't spend mana to cast a spell. But well, how do you actually get him out of the command zone? It has Convoke, so your creatures can help casting this, and Delve, so cards in your graveyard can help casting this. Notably, the cards in your graveyard can only reduce the generic cost, while your creatures can help pay the colored cost if they have the same color. And since the two are split black green, the 2 mana pips up in its right corner, either black or green creatures can cast this. You can also cast Hogak from your graveyard, and itself is just an 8/8 trample. There's different ways to approach this, I believe. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of creatures that mill, because those creatures can pay for both Convoke and Delve. I think it should be possible to get Hogak out. If you're doing super well, maybe turn 2. Yes, I believe you can get him out on turn 2. But then the question is, what do you do with an 8/8 trample? I believe an 8/8 trample is not good enough for a Voltron deck. What is nice is just having a repeatedly castable high power creature that you can maybe sacrifice. Right? What I would do looking at this. So first, let's find, it has to be in here somewhere. Stitcher Supplier should be in here somewhere. And let's put him into the Hogak tag, which is not here, but let's add it real quick. Hog. Just a hog. Stitcher Supplier is the perfect creature for this. It pays for 4 mana of your 7 mana commander. You already played a land in the first turn, so turn 5 you have like 5 mana to cast your commander. 6 if you count the land drop. So you just need a bit of extra mill, which could be a dredge card in your graveyard. Let's talk about dredge and add Stinkweed Imp. Or actually Golgari Grave Troll, I guess. Golgari Grave Troll, it's legal, so, and it is the best dredger. Sorry, this is in Hazel still. And it seems I already added it somewhere, so let's look it up. Golgari Grave Troll. Let's add it to the hog. It's just a fantastic 3-letter 3 letters for Hogak. Yes, so in case you don't know, dredge, and there's no text explaining it. If this card is in your graveyard and you would draw a card as a replacement effect, you can instead get Golgari Grave Troll back into your hand and mill 6 cards. So, hypothetical scenario, turn 1 you play Stitcher Supplier, and then turn 2 you dredge Golgari Grave Troll because you milled it with Stitcher Supplier, and you have another 1-drop or 2-drop you can play. Hogak turn 2, easy peasy, no problem. Wait, why is there 2 copies? So are they now both gone? No. Okay. Perfect. Let's talk about the payoff for having a turn 2 8/8. Because in Commander, as I said, I don't think an 8/8 trample is good enough, even on turn 2, because Swords to Plowshares, because like everybody's quickly outramping you, even if you kill one person by attacking them 3 times. First of all, I assume most places would call that like bad etiquette. Just kill one guy and then you have no chance of winning. So let's look for the combination of words sacrifice and equal power. So what I'm hoping to find is cards that sacrifice Hogak, and then mill cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power. Altar of Dementia is already in the deck, so I will need to add just a Hogak tag. Let's find other cards. Altar of the Wretched does a similar thing where you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, draw X cards, then mill X cards, where X is that creature's power. Because you already also mill X cards, I think this card is perfect for a Hogak deck, because then 8 cards milled is like more than you would need to cast Hogak. Of course, you still need the 2-colored mana, but Altar of the Wretched is exactly the type of card I would be looking for in a Hogak deck. Let's see if we find other stuff. Bury target non-artifact attacking creature, put a shadow token. Okay, so this is like, I mean, it's a Homelands card, so it's bad. Costs 5 mana, that's too expensive. Sacrifice a creature. Reveal cards from the top of your library equal to the sacrificed creature's power. Put 1 into the hand and remove the rest for the game. Man, these old cards, I think that's Nemesis. I think that's not good enough. Greater good, yes. I mean, sacrifice a creature on an enchantment, so like a great sacrifice outlet. Draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power, and then discard 3 cards. Again, perfect mixture. We're drawing cards, which is always great. We could even use those draws to dredge even more. And then we also get to discard 3 cards, which should usually be an upside in our deck. Jared, I also took a look at recently. It gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. For 3 mana and sacrificing a creature, each opponent loses life equal to the sacrifice creature's power. And for sacrificing a swamp and a forest, you get to put them back into your hand from your graveyard. So what this does is you can mill it and still have access to it quite easily. Life's Legacy, also great. Sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power. There's a bunch of these examples, but again, not looking for all of them, just giving a few examples. Let's see if we find like an insane standout. The Commander Skullstorm. Let's see. The reason why I think this might not be as good as you'd think at first glance is most of the time you might be putting Hogak into the graveyard, because you can cast them from the graveyard, right? I get that you also have the option of putting him into the command zone and then repeatedly casting him again and again and again, because you can pay for command text with just exiling cards from your graveyard. What I would do is, so time cast commander. Let's look for that. Time cast commander. So there is 5 cards that feature this text. Opal Palace, I would disregard. It's not very good. Add 1 mana when you spend this. Scry X, that's like okay. All of this is okay. So your commander costs 1 less to cast for each time he's been cast from the command zone, and whenever your commander is put into the command zone from anywhere, draw a card. I think this approach is interesting, and I'm glad you're mentioning it, and I'm gonna mention it in the video. I'm also gonna mention that I think there might be a slight disconnect with the rest of your deck then. I believe the rest of your deck would much prefer Hogak being in the graveyard. Because I know you're milling a lot of cards, but command tax can ramp up quite quickly. In practice, it might end up that this is just so good that you're putting Hogak into the command zone like 5-6 times once you draw this card. So glad you mentioned it. I'm not sure if it's gonna end up being good in practice. It might. It genuinely might be very good. But I think there's a bit of contention with exiling more and more and more. Although I do like it from a thematic standpoint. Hogek seems like a very greedy thing. But yes, I think we have a lot of good stuff to talk about for Hogek now. Attacked sorceries. So far, enough inspiration. No need to look at EDA trick. Okay. Nice. Honest Rutstein. 3 mana, 3/2, human warlock. When it enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This seems super degenerate. When I see generic cost reduction, I immediately think artifact spam. So we are talking Mirror Retriever. We are talking Scrap Heap. Is it called Scrap Heap Scrounger, or is that I think that's a different card. We'll take a quick look. Yeah, that's not the card I'm looking for. Kind of looping Mirror Retrievers. And now we also need to find the other card that I couldn't remember when we talked about Mono Black Spellslinger. So it was an enchantment that reduces your non-creature spells by 2. So now I need to find the equivalent for creature. Heartless Summoning. Oh, I remembered it before I can find it. Well, sometimes it do be like that. Heartless Summoning. And the way I would build this deck is either go like full on the artifact route, or so Heartless Summoning. Let's first talk about this. Creature spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, but they get a -1/-1 counter. Let's add it to Honest Rutstein. So either I would go the full Mirror Retriever route, where you can see that Mirror Retriever costs 2, so it costs 0, and then it immediately dies. Because it's a 1/1, it gets -1/-1. So you could go full artifact spam, or you could try a more fair approach, in which the way I would build this deck, in theory, would be green 1-drops that ramp. So let's add the representative of, oh god, Llanowar. Is that here how you write it? Yeah, it's just a Llanowar elf. Llanowar druid? Oh my god. Windhorn elf? How am I? Oh my god. Yes, that's one of the mana elves. There's just too many, honestly, to remember the names of all. The way I would build this deck, if I wasn't going full artifact route, we might find more examples for artifacts, would be heavy 1-drop ramp, turn to Rutstein, and then 5 mana cards, right? To have a 1/3/5 curve. 3 lands plus Findoran Elves casts your 5-drops on turn 3. Is there any good 5-drops that come to mind immediately? I think of look at Phyrexian, mana value 5 creature. Does it work like that? Come on. Type creature. Mana value equals 5. There's not that many, but these are the ones that I'm thinking of. The Filer of Vigor, with an additional cost to cast green permanent spells you may pay to life. Those spells cost green less to cast if you paid life this way, This only affects green mana symbols. And whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. There is one of these for every color. So if you're building something that casts a lot of permanents, then I think these might be a worthy inclusion. Of course, not all of them were created equal. Putting a +1/+1 counter on each creature is not that good. The blue one draws you a card, which is insane. But I know there's a black one as well. It might be called not the Filer. The creature dying causes a triggered ability. Yeah, sure. Like, let's get a few mentions of good 5-drops. We don't need, again, like the best ones, the full picture. I want to find like straight up bangers. You could play cards like Psychosis Crawler, which its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your hands, and whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. But I think this kind of card fits better into more specific strategies. Shieldred, unfortunately, like super expensive, but I assume that most like players are somewhat proxy friendly and play groups, so price and not really a consideration unless a card is like super expensive. Skithrix, too specific. Stuff like Warrenclex, yeah. When it enters, search your library for up to 2 forests, put them into your hand and shuffle. And it's just a 6/6 trample reach, and on the backside it's a saga where you mill 10 and then put 2 creatures of those cards onto the battlefield and put counters, and like, yeah, it transforms back in the end. So stuff like this is what I would be looking for. I'm surprised I didn't find the black version of it. I might have scrolled past it. It might cost more or less mana though. That is the basic approach I would choose for Old Rutstein. Let's see if we can find a different approach. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand is not exactly the most insane line of text. So I'd rather focus on the Mirror Retriever combo and find more like ways to make like to actually make it work. Shouldn't be too difficult, honestly. I'm just blanking on the names. It's not Scrapheap Scrounger. Yeah. I even played this combo. Could be stuff like Krark-Clan Ironworks, also Sacrifice to Mirror Retriever, and I guess I'll just have to look for it. We're looking for 3 mana artifacts that return artifact to hand. And itself is an artifact. There's multiple of these. I'm just completely blanking on the names. Yeah, like Junk Diver is one example, but Scrap Trawler is what I'm looking for. Whenever it or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact in your graveyard with less mana value. So the way this works is, let's say you either have Krark-Clan Ironworks and your commander, or you have Old Rutstein and Heartless Summoning. You can then loop the Mirror Retriever and the Scrap Trawler infinitely. Wow, that is certainly one of the artworks of all time. To be honest, like, I really like the artwork, but that is a lot of stuff going on. There's a smoking cat. It's really cool artwork, but my goodness, is it confusing. Let's switch to printing, especially for the video. Choose the OG Fifth Dawn one. Also a pretty fun card. So yeah, I don't think if I have much more interesting stuff to say about Honest Rutstein. I mean, he is, contrary to what his name says, not very honest. I mean, he is a very shady person. No questions, no refunds. Mm, yeah, I think there's an unfair combo-y way to play him, or a very fair way to use him as one of those, like, yeah, just as a cost reducer for your 5 drops. Okay, let's move on. Izoni, Center of the Web. A 6 mana 5/4 elf detective. It has menace. When it enters or attacks, you may collect evidence 4. I believe that means exiling cards with mana value 4 or more from your graveyard. And if you do, create 2/2/1 black and green creature tokens that are spiders with menace and reach. And you sacrifice 4 tokens to surveil 2 and then draw 2 cards and gain 2 life. Sacrificing 4 tokens to surveil 2, draw 2 is kind of insane. Only unfortunate for this commander, like the only thing that's unfortunate for this commander is that we already talked about a bunch of stuff that makes a lot of tokens. So it's gonna be a bit of a repeat. I assume in the video, I will link back to a lot of the earlier commanders that create a lot of food tokens. Academy Manufacturer, of course, again, a must. Like these token doublers, easy peasy. What we should focus on here is collect evidence 4. There's not much I want to say here, except that something that's great with collect evidence 4, if they didn't change like any rules, is like split cards. Split cards have the combined mana value in other zones than the stack. So let's say there's a card that consists of a spell that costs 1. Let's say it searches for a land or something, and the spell that's 3 on the other half, then this would count as collect evidence 4. I'm just not sure how to find those. So this is actually a case where I would go to EDHREC and look for Izoni, because I know what I'm looking for, what type of cards I'm looking for, but I don't know how to find them. Insidious Roots, right? That's an example of a card that's we will already have talked about in the video. So I might not talk about it again. What I'm looking for is something slightly different here, just to showcase, right? If I were building a deck, of course, these cards are ending in my deck. We're thinking about content here. I don't want to mention all the same cards again and again and again. I'm trying to present something new. I'm not sure if the people take the same approach, though. I don't see a single split card here. Because, yeah, like that is the thing that I would... That's, usually I'm just sharing the first thing that comes to my mind. And that's exactly that. That is what I first thought about. It's like when you're trying to cheat cascade decks, where you reveal cards from the top of your library until you hit something that costs less than the card with cascade, and you play a bunch of these double cards. Actually, I know a place where I will find what I'm looking for, and that is in Cody decks. Cody, like this. Cody. This is a commander where you can cast permanent spells. For 4, you add mana of any color, Uberg, and when you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery card with lesser mana value. So what you're trying to do is play a bunch of split cards with really, really high mana value. I can't believe people are not actually doing this. Let's look at some tags here. Combo. I can't believe people are not doing the same thing as me. Like it's so obvious to me. Okay, I might need to put a pin in this and do some research off screen because the yeah, like exactly like rooms, right? Rooms have split card. Let's use a room. I was thinking of instants and sorceries, but let's search for subtype room. It's just like such a funny subtype. Yeah. Oh, what a nightmare to read and display. I need to tilt my head by like 90 degrees. Let's just take one room that is decently good. Maybe it is a 1 and a 3 if we're good. Oh my god, I'm getting a headache just looking at these. I've seen this one before. If you control a demon, play lands from graveyard. Hallelujah. I'm gonna take this, so I need to like so I can stop looking at tilted cards because it tilts me. But yes, that's exactly one of these examples that I'm looking for. A room has combined mana value of its left and right side, or up and down side. Change tags, hashtag easel. Let's confirm real quick. Sometimes, I think something works, but I do need to do a double check because, sometimes you're not perfectly informed. Let's see if it says anything about, yeah. While in any zone other than the stack or the battlefield, a room card's characteristics are the combination of its two doors. So, for example, Bottomless Pool and Locker Room has a mana value of 6 while it's in your library, or consequently the graveyard, right? Because it's a zone other than the stack or the battlefield. So this is what I would use Izoni to highlight. This exact mechanic. Because the other token stuff is split. Aha. See, another great benefit of having... I'm not sure where to enter it. I can probably just enter it here. Of having live chat. That's why I always say, like, I'm not the best deck builder or anything. Like, it's great to learn something new. Is split. Yeah. I was thinking of status and statue. And never to return and mouth to feed. Cause like this, but rooms of course exist. Let's add maybe not life and death because it's not 4, but driven and despair. Why not? Driven to despair. Sorry, that's the word you use to combine these ones with aftermath. So yeah, that's what I will highlight in the video is split cards. Let's add this to EZO. And let's move on because we've talked a lot about token makers. So let's move on to experience. 4 mana, 3/4, Meren of Clan Neltoth. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter, which you can proliferate. First thing we always need to find finality literally has Izoni in the art. Alright. Alright, you got me. Find finality. Alright. I'm gonna add it before we move on. And it's a decent spell. Like a board wipe and a recurring thing. It's okay. It's nothing that gets me super excited, but it's good enough. Let's use this instead of. Also, what's nice about this in the video, I can just tilt this by 90 degrees, whereas this is always a mess. What an awful design. Okay. Let's move on to Meren. So whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of your end step, choose target creature card in your graveyard. If the card's mana value is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So I'm thinking tokens. that you can sacrifice. I'm thinking sacrifice outlets. So let's add let's add there's a few things that immediately come to mind. We want creatures to die. Sacrifice, and then we are looking for an activated ability with this, and a mana value equal 1, and I know it's a creature, but I forgot the name. Creature. I'm thinking of not Carrion Feeder, there's a better one. Why is there only... What is this card? Well, who knows? Yes, wow, okay, it's the very last card. Viscera Seer, sacrifice to scry 1. Like, this is, of course, the card that we want to play in a deck that cares about creatures dying. What else do we care about? We care about technically high mana value, but we also care about proliferate. And there's a bunch of good cards that come to mind. Let's find the best ones. And maybe try to showcase some new cards. Canker Bloom. I left it out of another commander that cares about proliferate because it's not exciting enough. Here, though, because it sacrifices itself, it automatically adds an experience counter. And then it also proliferates. So, like, this is super, super good. Maybe I'm also going to showcase, like, Bloated Contaminator. Since Marin costs 4, I assume your deck will consist of a lot of 2-drop ramp. Like, just all the generally good Sakura Tribe Elder, Nature's Lore, and all that stuff. So maybe a 3-drop is a bit awkward. But maybe the turn after you play Marin, you play Bloated Contaminator for 3, and then another piece of ramp. I genuinely don't know. We're gonna talk about Sakura Tribe Elder being the best way to ramp in a deck like this because, well, because it dies. Sacrifice a creature, proliferate. Sometimes, like, this card, even in a Marin deck, I think is not super exciting, but it's enough of a role player that I'm interested. Sacrificing a creature adds an experience counter. This adds an experience counter. Staff of Completion. Okay, so we're thinking... Let's find Staff of Completion. It's in here somewhere. And let's add the tag #Mur. Sakura Tribe Elder. Also, let's add the tag Mur. And then let's add all those cards we just found, which are Canker Bloom. It's just such a perfect fit because it's a flexible card that can destroy artifacts, enchantments, or proliferate, and it dies, which means it proliferates. Viscera Seer, great because it's one of the best sacrifice outlets. And now we kind of need to find good cards to reanimate. I mean, in general, the way we looked for cards already provided some great cards. Sakura Tribe Elder and Canker Bloom are already great cards to reanimate because you can sacrifice them immediately to get a nice effect. Maybe now we're looking for Haymakers to do a similar thing. Do we know things that sacrifice themselves for crazy effects off the top of our heads? Thinking of all the reanimate targets, but not necessarily anything comes to mind. I think this will have to be another search. Let's look for, again, sacrifice and the activated ability. let's look for creatures. But let's look for mana value greater than 5. Am I crazy? Sacrifice creatures. Did I mistype something? I'm not sure. Oh, sorry. Of course. I did mistype. And let's see if any like good cards come to mind. Sacrifice X other creatures, return X target creature cards from graveyard to the battlefield. Seems pretty good. We might talk about it because you can sacrifice X other creatures. It's pretty good. Let's see. Usually the black cards sacrifice other creatures. Disciple of Rayleigh would for sure end up in the deck. It's always like a decent card, but in this deck it's specifically very good. Sacrifice a bunch of creatures. I'm looking for something that like offs itself for great effect. Okay, let's see. Sacrifice Maggots of the Mirror, exchange life totals with target opponent. Alright. That's pretty funny. It might not be insanely good, but I mean, at end step you get it back. I'm gonna mention it if I don't find anything else right now. It would be nicer to have something that doesn't need to tap ability. But for now, that's good enough. Other people are gonna find great stuff here, I think. That's where the viewer comes in the video to suggest something also in the comments. Because my creativity, my ideas are reaching an end. And I believe we have enough to talk about. Also because I have to admit, experience counters I find a bit obnoxious. Personally. I think it deserves a shout out because it's a unique mechanic. But yeah, like Proliferate being so good with experience counters makes it feel to me like most experience counters or decks are very similar. Anyways, Nath of the Guild Leaf, 5 mana, 4/4 Elf Warrior. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target opponent discard a card at random. Oh no! Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may put a 1/1 elf. Excuse me. So sorry. So whenever an opponent discards a card, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. Oof. Is there something to talk about here? It's clearly not an elf commander. You might have elf synergies in your deck, but if you want to build elves, there's just like 10 better commanders. Right? Like it's not close. Does it help for your game plan that the card is random? I believe it matters in the sense that there are cards that care about which type of card your opponents discarded. I'm thinking Waste Not and the legs. Let's add Waste Not to look at the wording. Waste Not. Such a fun card, by the way. So Waste Not, let me just read it out. Whenever an opponent discards a creature card, you get to create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add black. And whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, you draw a card. The reason I'm thinking of cards like this is because... Sorry, I'm going to mute myself real quick. Okay, I didn't have to sneeze. whatever. So why I'm thinking of cards like these is usually the problem these cards have is the opponent just gets to choose what is worst for you. So let's say you have no cards in hand after you cast a discard spell. They're going to try to discard a land card so you gain mana and that you can do nothing with. The fact that they don't get to choose here means Waste Not is a bit more reliable. Maybe less so than targeted discard, but if we're thinking random discard, this could just be the theme. So let's add him to Turok. Ooh, beautiful, beautiful art it shows automatically. Oops. I added it to the wrong thing. We were talking nats. Change tags. Hashtag nats. Hashtag nats. You're gonna make yourself some enemy stats for sure. Because people hate, absolutely despise discard anyways. And if it's targeted, I think there's less frustrations than random discard. Let's look for more at random. Discard at random. Let's see if there's good cards. So ward, discard a card at random. Whenever it attacks, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, if any player loses half their life. It's not exactly what you're looking for. During each player's upkeep, that player discards a card at random is hilarious. Might not be good enough. Oh no, I'm having too much fun imagining situations at my local game store. Mind Chatter is what we're looking for. Stuff like that, like Hypnotic Spectre. Stu Turk himself. And maybe Hypnotic Spectre is not random. Oh, it is. I just didn't look at that. So maybe what I'm gonna say here in the video is that you can evoke kind of this old school feeling where they didn't make it so discard isn't random. Like nowadays, how many cards really are like untargeted random discard? I think they shy away from that a lot now. Turok is an exception, but that is because it's a callback to, well, him to Turok. So maybe that's what I'm going to talk about. But there has to be something more with discard and then making creature tokens. So maybe we're looking for sacrifice and discard. What I'm hoping to find, sacrifice, creature, discard. What I'm hoping to find is cards where you can use the creatures you get by making your opponents discard to then make them discard more. This guy sacrifices itself. Honestly, this is not a horrible card. But not what I'm looking for. So, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, choose a non-land card name, then target player reveals your hand and discards all cards with the same name. So the Cabal stuff is, of course, very good if you have an idea of what's in your opponent's hand, which we don't have with the cards we've shown so far, because all of those are random and you don't get to take a look. But pairing this with actual discard, I mean, is just good. And the second creature you sacrifice here will give you an idea of what's in your opponent's hand. And it makes use of the 1/1 creatures, for sure. Might be good enough, even if there's not more. Let's see if we can find more creatures that sacrifice small little dorks to make someone else discard. Not yourself Discord, other people Discord. If not, that is fine. I'm not going to spend too much more time on this because I already have a good idea of what I want to talk about. I'm a little surprised though. This guy for sure sacrifices itself. Creature attacked and isn't blocked, you may sacrifice it. Yes. Crazy blurry artwork. Yes, sacrifice una criatura. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it. That player discards that card. Activate only as a sorcery. Is that not the perfect card for this commander? You sacrifice a creature and pay a black. You can choose any card. It can be a land, which I find insane. And you get a creature back. So as long as you have mana, your opponents are not gonna have a good time. That is perfect. I really want to talk about this card then. Let's make sure it's not in Italian for the video. We have so many commanders, and I want to be kind of careful because I might want to do a first recording session, though I usually do everything in one session. And I'm a bit scared of losing my voice if I do all the commanders today. I do have some nice tea and honey here with a bit of milk, but that might not be good enough. Damn. So the card is in here already. That's the problem. If you add a card and it already has a tag, then, well, it won't appear under untagged, which is where I would expect the card to be. And now I have a hard time finding it. That's annoying. Need to take a quick peek through here because of course I didn't remember the name because it was in Italian. But maybe we'll like reminisce a little. Belladros, going infinite with mana. Blacks we talked about. Cheville, the absolutely not Witcher inspired card, by the way, in a set about big monsters. You put out contracts and kill them. Damn. I think I need to go into the search again and remember that, like, find the name. So unlucky. I hate when that happens. Or we just move on and I make a note that I should not forget this, so we don't like hold up the stream anymore. So annoying. Anything good that mention crimes since he targets? There is good stuff that mentions crimes, yes, and we already talked about that. The best crime maker is like I forgot. A Crow and Horse. I believe it's like KR something. Okay, might not be. Let's first look for crime real quick because I know what cards I want. Here, like I really like the Free Strider Lookout. It's just good ramp. Also, thank you for the suggestion. I want this and Kervek are like the best examples. So Free Strider and Kaerwick. Give him the natty tag. Move down here. Where's my Free Strider Lookout? Free Strider Lookout. Oh, well, I might just be blind. And then I'm gonna really quickly like sacrifice a creature, and I believe it was do it only as a sorcery, and it had this. no. Oh no. Of course, we need discard and type enchantment. Yes, of course. I just didn't add it apparently. So Mind Slash is what I'm looking for. Well, it helps if you add the stuff to the list. That certainly makes it a bit easier to find afterwards. Am I crazy? Okay, I think I'm going crazy. Well, also with the mention of crime, I think now we have like a good section of the video. Yeah, Mind Slash. And I'm gonna... It's always a bit annoying when you download all the images and then you realize something is in Italian because you always download all the images on Moxfield. Rentmaw, a relatively new card, a Scarecrow, 5 mana, 5/5. When Rentmaw enters, and whenever you play a card with 2 or more card types, each player sacrifices a creature. Sorry, each player creates a 2/2 black bird creature token with flying. The tokens are goaded for the rest of the game. Goad, in my experience, is a very, very strong mechanic. Because oftentimes, like, the attacks are bad for kind of both players. They'd much rather just not trade their creatures. And here we have a mention of card types. What I found yesterday, was it yesterday? It might have been longer ago, is Hammer of Perforos, which I found particularly interesting because it creates tokens that have 3 card types: enchantment, creature, artifact. So what we're looking for is something like Hammer of Perforos, but of course in black-green. Let's look at the exact wording again, so we don't make like dumb assumption. Whenever you play a card with 2 or more card types. So what we are looking for is artifact creatures and enchantment creatures. I don't think there's much more we can do with this. There's Kindred, I guess. I think those would be the easiest to just find out if there's something good. Yeah, so you could be playing Bitter Blossom in the stack. It's just a solid card. Maybe not as good in Commander. I honestly have never played with it. But it's a 2-mana card that triggers and provides extra flyers. So that could be interesting. This cares about goblins. This cares about demons. You are getting birds, though. So it might be a little difficult to find something for that. Tribal instant, destroy target non-elf creature, I think is perfect. It's an instant that triggers your commander. That's interesting. It's a ramp spell. It's on curve. Give me a second. It costs 5, so 3 mana ramp is kind of perfect. Play this on 3. Next turn you play Rentmaw, but also it triggers your Rentmaw. That's great. We have Formless Genesis again, which is a repeatably castable thing that triggers Rentmaw. So, might get a mention again. Lignify. 0/4 tree folk with no abilities. Good removal, honestly. So I 1 and create a bunch of elf tokens. We don't need that many. But there is a bunch. Honestly, that's way, way, way more than I expected. And some of these are really like decent on their own. But if you get a 2/2 for each player also. That's very, very nice. Sorcery. Some of these, of course, are 2 type specific, but who knows? Artifact creatures, of course, doesn't make a lot of sense to look at. Enchantment, comma, creature. It doesn't work like that, but I always fix it here. I think I can just not do the comma. Let's see if there's good enchantment creatures. I really like Demon Horror Nightmares cost 1 less, and if a spell was cast, if it cost less than it would usually cost, target opponent loses life equal to the difference. I'm not sure if it's made for a Rent mod deck. If you have enough enchantment creatures, I think this is a perfectly fine inclusion. We have Arasta of the Endless Web again. See if we can find other just generically good enchantment creature cards. Brain Maggot, not that great. I really like Cost of Crucifix, even though it's been power crept to hell and back. Let's see. Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Also just a generically good card. Creatures you control have tap at 1 mana, also good. I really like all of those enduring vitality type cards that come back. Enduring tenacity, enduring vitality. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 1 more so it shows up that there's 2. I'm also gonna do the same for Arasta, just so I remember that I need to add a tag to those cards because they're already in the list, right? So stuff like that. It's a bit of a group slug, I guess. And I really like the typing matters cards. I think that's enough. Oh yeah, we can mention the Overlords. Very famously good cards. And I think once they're out of standard, their price will drop, of course. I'm not sure how relevant they are. You could turn this into a full-on enchantment creature deck. There is enough support, even in just black-green. I really like Springheart and Tuco. Ooh. One of them that should get a shout-out is Shigeki. Shigeki should get a mention because it's a 2-mana legendary enchantment creature, so it triggers your Rent Maw. But also for 2 mana and tapping it, you get to return it to your hand, reveal 4 cards, put a land card from among those cards onto the battlefield. The rest it goes into your graveyard. And then, of course, for just 2 mana, you can trigger Rent Maw again. So I think this is perfect. I think that's the type of card we're looking for here for Rent Maw. In the Type Matters strategy. So Arasta gets the Ren tag. #Ren. Like the now very famous artist. This gets the Ren tag. This is why I added a second one, because now everything that has a 2 next to it, I know needs a Ren tag. My goodness, we've talked about so many commanders already. It really goes to show, like, the editing process of the video is not difficult, and it doesn't even take that much time. It's very tedious, I'll say that, because it's a lot of the same cuts. But the research, I think we don't need this. I don't think we need this. We have like better cards to talk about, like the Overlords, Ren, Shigeki, kind of perfect. And maybe this, or like I'm gonna stick to this. Yeah, so the editing process is not difficult, but the research, it just takes a while. You might think like, yeah, like you're just looking at magic cards. That's, of course, true. But most of these commanders are so complex, have so many different approaches. And I kind of want to explore most of them. Sometimes I just find a few of these like approaches very boring. But we haven't even talked about like artifact creatures. And artifact creatures is so generic that taking a deep dive into them is extremely difficult. We could also talk about scarecrows here, right? I already have a million cards that I need to mention in the video, which means the segment is already going to be like not that short. And still there's so much more. Let's take a quick peek at scarecrows and see if we can mention at least a few new cards. Type scare, I always do the plural, scarecrow. Let's see if we can mention a few new cards, because in my opinion, that is always a good reason to dive into something. Dratilla already got a mention in the video, and it's not particularly good. Most of these are just bad creatures. Painter's Servant. I believe it got a reprint. And I'm so stoked. When it comes into play, choose a color. All cards that aren't in play, spells and permanents, are the chosen color in addition to their other colors. Oof, you can do so much cool stuff. And personally, I love the artwork. I think it got a different artwork now, but man, oh man. I mean, Scare Crone is like a good card if you go the artifact route, right? You can return artifact creatures from your graveyard to play, although that doesn't trigger Rent Maw. It's just good value. And if we don't find anything super interesting, that's also fine. Swarm Weaver enters, create 2 1/1 black and green instant creature tokens with flying. Delirium, as long as there's 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyards, insects and spiders you control have +1/+1 and have Death Touch. This is more of a commander in my opinion, like for the command zone. It kind of embodies what we're looking for. It's a creature that comes with 3 bodies. It triggers your commander, and Delirium is a keyword that we need to mention. I'm not sure if I talked about Delirium in this video already, but that's definitely something we need to mention. I don't think this card is going to be the representative here, though. Attacks if they have 4 more. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. If it's a land, you might put it onto the battlefield. Also not that great. Like, the Scarecrows are not super good if you're not 5 colors. But let's look for Oracle, Delirium, and let's see if we can find stuff that has 2 types, maybe even. That isn't a Scarecrow. Or just like absolute bangers of Delirium cards. Enchantment creature, that's super expensive, but let's take a look. Trample Haste. Whenever it attacks, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, other attacking creatures get +4/+4. That is, again, a wonderful tip. Play means playing lands as a special action. Off the top of my head, I can think of like 4 or 5 artifact lands. I don't think you'll play all of them. But yeah, that's definitely something we need to take into consideration. Again, every second I enjoy of doing this live. Just getting the hive mind is always the smartest mind. Another Scarecrow that we maybe overlooked. Delirium at the end step. 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Each opponent may sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Then Osseous Stick Twister deals damage equal to its power to each opponent who didn't sacrifice a permanent. It's a bit of a role player. It's not that great. 1 and a 3/3 just not good enough. We might need to talk about this, but that's like a bad sign, I guess. But what you mentioned is much more exciting. Type land uh, and is, I think, what it always assumes. Artifacts. Ah, I forgot the tap land cycle. So for sure you're gonna play these. Let's use this as like the tap land cycle. And this artifact land clue. Crazy. But I'm of course thinking of like Tree of Tales, Vault of Whispers. Yeah. And I think we have a good package to talk about for Rentmaw. It's too wide to cover everything. But it's certainly like the open commanders might be most difficult for me to talk about. And they're also, in my opinion, the most difficult to get people excited about. I think the aspects of this card that make people excited are it's a scarecrow. Right? That's like genuinely one of the things that gets people excited. And then maybe goading gets people excited. The effect itself of creating a 2/2 and caring about card types is not particularly exciting. But I always try to make a point that what is interesting in deck building might not be what feels good to play. I've made that experience a bunch of times that I'm like, this deck is so much fun to build. It's so much fun to also goldfish. And then you bring it to the table and everybody's like, what the fuck are you doing? That's like super annoying. And all you get is negativity. And you're like, okay, well, obviously the strategy is better in theory than it is in an actual social setting. Sapling of Kolfinor is indestructible. 5 mana, 2/5, Treefolk Shaman. Whenever it attacks, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you gain life equal to that card's toughness, and then you lose life equal to its power. Then put it into your hand. My first thought was, there is a bunch of cards that care about you gaining life. There's also, presumably, a lot of cards that care about you losing life. This commander is probably not that great of a Treefolk commander. It honestly feels more like a Voltron commander. A very peculiar Voltron commander. Of course. Is it Exquisite Blood? Exquisite Blood. No, but it's Sanguine Bond, right? We're thinking of cards like... Sorry, I need to look the name up again. Sep. So I assume I gave it a tag. Hashtag Sep. We're thinking of cards like this. And there's more of those. Then we are thinking of similar cards, but whenever you lose life. Excuse me. So let's look for some. Whenever you lose life. I'm of course hoping to see cards that say like other opponents lose that much life. Or create maybe. How many cards is there? 227. That's, so let's say minus rarity common. That might be good role players, but we're looking for haymakers. And then because I'm me, minus is UB to cut the selection down even further. It's so funny that these Spider-Man cards now show up. They look super weird in between actual Magic cards because they're just Magic Arena cards. And you're like, Rylex, Symbiote Soldier Hero? Where the hell is that card from? Um, yeah. I assume there's just gonna be a bunch of pinging, but we might find one or two really good cards. Uh, yeah, like most of this is gonna be one. We could maybe exclude one from the search. Here, the Bronco is interesting. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. We've covered that effect, so I'm not gonna add Defiant Bloodlord to the list. There might be a better way to search for this. Haunted Crossroads is my first thought, plus mill. Haunted Crossroads. That's not how you write Crossroads. Yeah, for sure. We can add that right now. Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff that puts stuff on top of your library. Um, let's finish this thought and then let's add Haunted Crossroads. I've got it in the I've got it copied. Let's see. There's also like we're getting huge swings of life totals. That has to be worth something. I also have a deck that features similar cars, but a lot of the payoffs are white, so it might be different. Whenever you lose life for the first time, gain. Meh, not even that much. This is. I think I should have excluded. Actually, I'm gonna do this. Minus Oracle 1. 50 results. I guess I should have looked for that much or something like that. Uh-huh. So we were around here. Whenever a creature you control enters, target opponent loses life equal to the difference between that creature's power and its toughness. I think that card qualifies as kind of being perfect. In the new Low and Eclipsed, we saw more of that, so that is something we also need to keep in mind. Difference. Difference is a good keyword, or like a good Oracle text. Not 100% what I'm looking for, but there might just not be anything like the effect that I'm looking for, aka when you lose life, somebody else loses that much life. Okay, bro. What is this? You gain X life. Yeah, we're almost done. Whenever a creature dies. Vein Ripper had like a real impact for a very short time. Okay, so now let's add the Haunted Crossroads. Guess that was a good suggestion. Again, it's like gonna be a representative for this idea of putting cards back on top. And then let's look for Oracle difference. And then maybe you also add power because there might be a difference in mana cost or something. Oh, actually, way less than I expected. But of course, like good enough. Also, I just love pushing Lorwyn. First set in a while that I'm super excited about. Like, I really enjoyed Edges of Eternity, but Lorwyn, so 5 mana sorcery, choose 2 creatures, draw X cards, and the chosen creatures get +X/+X, and gain trample until end of turn, where X is the difference between the chosen creature's powers. Could be interesting. I think most of that is an Auras of the life gain / lose life thing, I mean, for sure. Yeah, the deck I am thinking about, I can quickly showcase it. It's still open here, is uh, Mardu. Let's see if we find anything in here, but of course, a lot of this is white. I was thinking of cards that pay you off for huge life swings. Unfortunately, like even Rowan is black-red. She rewards you because you tap and spells you cast this turn that are black and red, because X less where X is the amount of life you lost this turn. But amount of life you lost this turn could still be a good keyword. So we're looking at difference, which you already looked up, and then amount of life you lost. Could be interesting. But yeah, unfortunately, like I was thinking of something like Children of Corliss, where you can sacrifice them to gain a life equal to the life you've lost this turn. I assume there is not gonna be a good black card. Black is very good at losing life, but not as good at getting it back. Right. We could swap life totals, but again, we're actually trying to go up, not down. Yeah. Okay, so that I think is a dead end, but let's look at amount life lost. Okay. Interesting. She's a commander also. We're going to talk about her later, but 1 and tap, choose another target creature, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it, equal to the amount of life you gained this turn or the amount of life you lost this turn, whichever is greater. Activate only as a sorcery. I think this might not end up in the deck like this, but you know. Because what I foresee is you're gonna put Tree Folk in your deck, right? 0 power and then 7 toughness or whatever. So it's only gonna be about the life you gain this turn, and there's probably better ways. We might talk about her still. I'm gonna like quickly pour myself a cup of tea so my poor voice doesn't like get super coarse. Stay hydrated always. We still haven't really talked about the indestructible part and the Voltron side. Also didn't take a look at him being a tree folk. What I would do first is like just generically look at creatures. I always type creature. And then we sort by toughness. And say descending. This way we find like, of course, the Great Wall of Ba Sing Se. A lot of universes beyond. Like this deserves a mention. I really, again, like my personal stance is I don't like universes beyond. If other people enjoy it, that's so cool for them. And in general, the concept is good. I had a lot of friends start playing Magic because of mostly 40k and Final Fantasy. And this card, I mean, this is just perfect, right? This is the perfect card. Lose 0, gain 30. And the other one's also a Final Fantasy card, but I'm only gonna mention like the World of Ba Sing Se because it's more perfect, I would say. And yeah, then there's like stuff like this. Exchange target opponent's life total with Tree of Perdition's toughness. 4 mana, 0/13. Tree of Redemption. Very funny. A bunch of this, and then I guess it's a toughness matters type deck. In the end, there might be cooler stuff to do though, because there is better commanders for a toughness matters. Why is it such an anime artwork? I want to swap that. Mm, this might be an open question then in the video. Like, I would need to, like, this, if I wasn't doing like a YouTube video, if I wasn't doing a stream, I would really take my time. Like, I would open up a new deck list, put him as a commander, put this in, and then sit on it for months until I have an idea. He's called Sap, right? Sap of Sephinor or something. Very fitting. The trees are here. Um, Sprine might not work as well, but it could. It could certainly. Sephinor, we talked about putting stuff on top of your library. That's great. And then here again we have the difference, which is a bit to talk about. I mean, I'm glad when there's Commander where I don't have as much to say, because if I cover all the commanders, all 36, I think it's just 35 now, maybe, and all of them get like a huge segment. Oof. It's genuinely like takes forever then. Why is this card $12? What? Am I crazy? Is it just because there is the card that makes someone lose the game if they have exactly 13 life? I mean, this card is unplayable, and it doesn't even seem like that great of a pet card. Well, Magic Secondary Market will be doing some Magic Secondary Market things. And yeah, I wanted to put this in SAP also. Change you printing and then like remove this. I'm glad I made it to 2 hours, which is the same I did yesterday, I think. And I took much better care of my voice, so making progress in some regards. I still might leave this for a third streaming, like third stream, at least some of this. Next week, because Mondays and Tuesdays are the days that I can stream. Maybe on the weekend. Try and create something. On the other hand, now 12 is a lot. 12 times 10 is 2 more hours. Let's focus on the here and now, but I might only go until like Skullbriar because I really want to talk about this guy also. But Seraph Realm Eater is next. A 3-mana 3/3 wolf. Whenever a permanent an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on this. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if Seraph has one or more +1/+1 counter on it, you may remove all of them. If you do, exile each other non-land permanent with converted mana cost less than or equal the number of counters removed this way. Oof, this seems super suppressive. Ooh. Yes, Catapult Fodder. I remember this by name. Good suggestion. Because isn't it like, didn't you play it with the Unhallowed Phalanx? Yes, right? You can sacrifice. Yeah. I believe you played those two together. I think I've played a draft like this, maybe on Magic Arena or Magic Online, where I either got beaten by this or played it myself. Most certainly I got beaten by it. Yeah. In general, like I think these cards are gonna get mentioned together on Helen Phalanx and this card. What I dislike, like in general about this segment is like this is kind of a package. And then Sanguine Bond and Sapling. Like, the Sapling itself, go away. I don't need bracket information on my weird thing. The Sapling itself sits like awkwardly in the middle of all of this. It's like he invited people to his party and everybody else is having fun, but they're here because of all the other people, not because of the host. Like he does his thing. He draws you cards, gains you life. But apart from Sanguine Bond, I didn't really find anything that makes perfect use of her. Like, Toughness Matters exists with or without Sapling, is what I'm trying to say. And like this combination of a lot of life gained and a lot of life lost, we didn't make good use of this. But you can't like break every commander. And maybe someone out there has like a good idea. In other cases, I would maybe look at the EDA trick thing, but I really want to like continue this list. Like, I want to make progress so I can start editing and get the mainline video out. Seraph, like we talked about him really quick. Whenever a permanent an opponent controls is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then it just repeatedly wipes the board. I'm not sure I want to talk about this card in the video. It seems super oppressive if it goes well, and I don't see great ways to benefit. Of course, like, first thing that comes to mind whenever I read permanent an opponent controls is put into graveyard is giving them creatures, which is something that we talked about in this, like, in last stream for a different commander. So in that way, he doesn't add anything to the video. And then really, I have no good idea of how to turn this into like a fun strategy for yourself. Is this like just a stacks piece? I genuinely don't know. I think I'm gonna bench him. Gonna move him to considering. Sevra, Queen of the Golgari. 4 mana 2/2 Elf Shaman. Whenever you sacrifice a black creature, you may pay 2 life. If you do, each other player sacrifices a creature. And whenever you sacrifice a green creature, you may gain 2 life. Okay. Well, one of these modes is much more powerful than the other. 2 life is pretty meaningless. At least, like, out of context. And then everybody else having to sacrifice a creature is crazy. Genuinely crazy. So let's look at green and black tokens, which I know, for example, pests are green and black. Maybe there's more. You're gonna play a Beledros, probably. Just as a commander, you know? Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 green and black pest tokens. Oh, of course, like this goes into the deck. Almost certainly. Uh-oh. Drinking and thinking, sometimes too hard for me. Almost died there. Callous Blood Mage, a 3 mana 2/1. Slightly flexible. Uh-oh, the voice is starting to go. Slightly flexible as it can exile target player's graveyard. It's a black creature, which is much better to sacrifice, as we've seen. And it also comes with a second creature you could sacrifice. Might end up in the deck. It's like a good role player. Stuff like this could go in. I won't mention all of these. Presumably, yeah, all of these pest makers is then something that the viewer can look into if they're interested. Sedgemoor Witch is here. Then we have good sacrifice outlets. I assume. Hmm. Yeah, very dangerous indeed. Hmm. Didn't we see a card already that kind of works perfectly if you have its counter pair? It was a good sacrifice outlet for which commander was it? It was this one. I'm talking of if you have a Nat in play and you have Mind Slash. Sacrifice a creature, look at target opponent's hand, choose a card from it. That player discards a card. The idea here is you want to be able to sacrifice creatures because that's what your commander wants from you. So this card is good on its own in the deck, like in a Savra deck. And then if you have Nat, which is also just, it's not an insane card, but I believe it works well together because you're also going to play Cabal Therapist and Cabal Therapy, which sacrifice creatures because they are black and you can sacrifice black creatures, which is, again, supremely powerful. Let's add all of these. Let's give all of them the Saf tag. Saf. Saf. There you go. Sav. 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 I genuinely believe, like, this is not just, like, laziness and recency bias. I genuinely believe all of these cards go into a Savra deck. These three especially, and I think this is then just... I mean, it might end up getting cut, but that's for somebody else to decide. Green and black tokens, or just black tokens. Black tokens, we're thinking rats, right? What other rat black token? There's like bigger tokens, like nightmare tokens, but let's see if we can find like, oh, I mean, of course, Bitter Blossom, right? Bitter Blossom makes black fairy tokens, I assume. Maybe they're blue and black even. Let's see if we can find like standout cards. Enters, each player discards all the cards, then creates that many 2/2 black creatures tokens. That could be a fun card for the other commander as well for Neth. Yeah, but Bitter Blossom and Bitter Bloom Bearer. I'm actually going to talk about this card because Bitter Blossom already got a mention and I like to shout out new cards. Certainly one of the best black token makers. And then maybe we try and find something. Sacrifice a creature. So Carrion. As an additional cost, sacrifice a creature, create X O1 black insect creature tokens where X is the sacrificed creature's power. Could be interesting. It provides a lot of stuff. Also, like, cards from Mirage might not be on people's plates and minds as much, so could be cool to give an older card a shout out. This gives green Suprolling tokens, which unfortunately is the wrong color. Don't get me wrong, there for sure is something about having a bunch of life gain triggers from the black and green pests, but Dina Soul Steepa, yeah, for sure. She's also on the commander list, so why not bring her back? Actually, like, yeah, this is good enough for me. Dina gives you a bunch of... Where's Dina? Yeah. Yeah, just a good sacrifice outlet. Might not even be the best one, but might be an auto include because she has good colors herself. And then Having a big creature also not bad. Din. I really like the Carrion also in combination, by the way, with the Dina. Because then you have a big Dina, you can sacrifice her and make a lot of 0-1 black creatures. Dude. Blight Mound. Okay. Oops, did I add them all to the wrong tag? Am I crazy? I think I added them all to the Dina tag. Oh. Yes. That's that. Sav. 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 What else did we talk about? That's it, right? Something like 10 to pests we could also mention again. If we're thinking about this in the form of a video, the video is like 40 minutes long. This gets mentioned at the very start. Dina is one of the first commanders I'm going to talk about. But I think like it's safe to say by now people won't be annoyed if I talk about the card again. Yep. Let's get rid of these Dean tags. And I think then we have quite a cute little package to talk about for Font of Agonies, for all the pay life we are doing. Wait. We're talking Savra, Font of Agony. There's a bunch of stuff. That's actually a good angle. I remember that's a 1-drop, right? Where you can later Font of Agonies, plural. The one where you can destroy creatures later on. Is that it? Sav. Blood counters. Destroy target creature. I have put this card in a bunch of decks. I'm gonna put it, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put it in Sav. And then we're gonna look up this line of text. I am not fully convinced that you need a card like Font of Agonies in a deck that makes your opponent sacrifice creatures repeatedly. We're gonna look for whenever you pay life, I believe. Whenever pay life. Let's see, you may pay. I guess that opens up all the cards that whenever you do this, pay life, but that's fine. We can get through this. We'll get through this together. I feel like there's Defiler of Flesh costs 4. Would have been a good mention for. I'm gonna add it and add it to the card where we also added Defiler of Vigor. It was Old Rutstein, I believe. Whenever you pay life. Lose life for the first time, of course, also works. Not that exciting. Man, some of these cards are just so hard to read. What the hell is going on? Gains life steal. Oh, this is the 13 or something. 13 life. Sub theme. Let's see. This might be one of the few examples that we have of an effect like this. So we'll get a shout out, but I will give it the caveat that unless your opponent goes extremely wide, I'm talking like extremely wide, your commander alone should have everything under lock and key for the most part. If I think about it, I would put this card in my deck still though. The opportunity cost is just so low. It costs 1 mana. It just sits there. And then you have instant speed interaction, which might be a little harder with Sabra, but of course, like, we're playing our Dinas, we're playing our Visceracias, which actually is Visceracia. Let's add them here as well. And let's add this to... Do we have old Rutstein? No, honest Rutstein, sorry. Of course, very honest. So yeah, Font of Agonies. We'll get a shout out, I'm pretty sure. And then I believe I'm gonna make this my final card because then we have 3, 7, 9. I mean, that would leave 10 commanders for the next stream if I don't talk about them. But I'm not doing this in a rational way anyways. So let's talk about Skullbriar, the Walking Grave. 2 mana. I love 2 mana Planeswalkers. Zombie Elemental. It's a 1/1. It has haste. When it deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. The kicker is, counters remain on Skullbriar as it moves to any zone other than a player's hand or library. Now, thankfully, if you play this as your commander, this card will never ever end up in your hand or library. I'm not sure if the actual play experience of Skullbriar will be good. If you love Voltron, well, this is one of the most Voltron commanders I have ever seen. He just keeps coming back stronger and stronger and stronger. Even exile-based removal, it just slows him down a little, and then he comes back. Also, Niels Hum, great artist. So let's think about this a little. Cards like the Ozolith are useless, which is nice because the Ozolith is like 30 euros. We want all the token multipliers we have. Like whenever, sorry, counter. Oh, do they say +1? Let's see. Let's find one cards and then copy the wording. Actually, I know one of the cards, so let's look at hardened scales. Okay, so if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, put that many +1/+1/+1 1/+1. What the hell is that sentence? If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on it instead. Holy smokes, that is certainly a wording. So we're looking for. I'm gonna like look up your card in a second. Your card suggestion. If one or more, and then counter, and then that's many. Like this should find a few of these. I know there's like a 2-drop constrictor. No, I think it was a 3-drop. Twice that many. Let's go. Doubling season. Let's go. Corpse Jack Menace. Let's go. I don't need all of these, but of course. Ooh, I really like Loading Zone. It's a new card shouting out, like, everybody knows Doubling Season. It doesn't need a mention. Everybody will think Doubling Season when they see Skullbriar. But they might not be thinking Loading Zone yet. This Ozolith, if one of more +1/+1 counters, put more. Activate only as a sorcery. Honestly, not the greatest. You probably want infinite amounts of these effects, so it's fine. I was thinking instead... Yes, I was thinking the Winding Constrictor. So in the video, I'm probably going to talk about the Winding Constrictor, Hardened Scales, because, like, in my opinion, these decks are called Hardened Scales decks. That's just the card that stands for the archetype. And then let me pull up another deck that I've been working on. Let's see. I think it's in the decks I have not. Yes, it's a Scavenge deck. So Scavenge is a mechanic where you put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on a creature by exiling another creature card from a graveyard and then using the power to determine how many +1/+1 counters. I believe these two guys work well together. He's already in the commander list. But what I'm looking for, of course, is +1/+1 counter payoffs, which should be in here already. It's like recycling your old work is the easiest way to save some time. So what do we have here? There has to be some big +1/+1 counter payoff. I also play Skullbriar in this deck, by the way, in the Scavenge deck. If one of more blah 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 +1/+1 counters would be put on a permanent control, put more on, but meh. Selvala is a great payoff. It just gives you infinite mana, but Terra Symbiosis is the card I was thinking of when I opened this deck. Whenever you put one or more +1/+1 counters on a creature card, or a creature you control, you may draw that many cards. Of course, we're trying to add like big chunks of counters. Cauldron of Souls can keep bringing him back. I assume there's gonna be a bunch of cards that keep bringing him back. Let's look up the two cards that you suggested after I finish looking through this deck real quick. Jared could also be like good again, like sacrificing him, bringing him back. Yeah, actually, like we're gonna add Jared as well. All of the stuff that sacrifices this card is probably pretty good. So first, let's look up Death's Presence. I'm also thinking Presence. Death's Presence and Cauldron of Souls. Cauldron, for me, is like, it's probably not how you write Cauldron. Yeah. Cauldron of Souls. Cauldron, when I hear Cauldron, I think of Agatha's Soul Cauldron, but probably not the same card and or price tag. When it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, yeah, like return it to the battlefield on its own control. Perfect suggestion. Thank you so much. This card is called Skullbriar, right? Wait, let's do this once. Yes, SKU. Let's give it the SKU tag. All of these. There's also like Reanimate gets cheaper if it targets like a certain mana value or less. Usually it's 3. I'm thinking of Unearth. And there's probably more. So let's look for return creature battlefield mana value. And probably less. I'm not sure if that's necessary. So I don't know this card, Troll Shaman. When it enters, if you cast it, choose target creature card in your graveyard. Return that card to the battlefield if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of basic land types among lands you control. Otherwise, put it in your hand. This would be good if it cost 3 mana and was like a 2/2. But yeah, like the Call of the Death Dwellers. Driver of the Dead is a real card? It looks like it's from an unset. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. believe this to be an auto-include in every Skull Briar deck. Choose 2. Return target creature card with converted mana cost. Maybe not premium enough, this kind of effect. Let's see. Converted 3 mana, get my commander back. Unearth. Tivar. Tyvar? Forgot how it's pronounced. These cards are certainly going to be in your deck. And then the last type of card, power among creatures you control. Most of these should be in the deck already. Let's look at the really good payoffs. Like gain life equal to the power is not that great, but this unfortunately needs to hit itself. So when it hits, you gain energy, and you can pay 6 energy to draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Well, in my opinion, that's just not good enough, right? But we can do another like Return of the Wild Speaker. Let's talk about Selvala, because she adds infinite mana at some point in the game. Maybe also Season of Gathering. Like putting a +1/+1 counter on Skullbriar and giving it Vigilance and Trample is like a nice finisher. Then you have the flexible mode of destroying artifacts and enchantments. And then also you can draw infinite amounts of cards. That is probably enough to talk about Skullbriar. Let's see, is there anything else? So we have a hasty 2-mana 1/1. We accounted for the mana value. Haste is not really something you need to account for. +1/+1 counters when it deals combat damage. Technically, that means you could give it double strike. Yeah, I think I'm gonna mention like a double strike equipment. Fire, what's it called? There's infinite amount of fire cards as well. Oh no, there's a Fire Nation. It used to be easy to find these cards, but then the Fire Nation attacked. I'm looking for the Fire Stick. You know, the weird Fire Shrieker. Exactly. It's like my go-to example because it does nothing but give double strike. Yeah, there's not that much stuff that gives double strike. Okay, so we've accounted for that line of text. Whenever it deals combat damage, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then counters remain on Skullbriar. Of course. What we didn't account for yet is, for sure, we want Cycle counter. Because, thanks to Ikoria, and now also Ether Drift, are they driving through Ikoria, maybe? I really have no idea what's happening in Ether Drift. When you cycle this card, put a +1/+1 counter. Oh no, this is not the right card. This is not what I'm looking for. This is the card I'm looking for. When you cycle Titanoth Rex, put a trample counter on target creature you control. Yes, please. Death Touch counter. It might seem a bit redundant when your creature is like a 21/21. But if we have Trample and Death Touch, then very quickly it becomes impossible to block Skullbriar. Now we've accounted for different tokens. There might be indestructible counter. Indestructible counters. I think shield counters are probably a bit worthless. Shield counters prevent damage ones or destroy effect ones. But you don't care if Skullbriar takes damage or gets destroyed as much. And if it gets destroyed, that means there's no shield counter on it. So like, they don't really help. There's gonna be a bunch of stuff that just has like indestructible and gives a counter. Myojin. So this enters with an indestructible counter. Maybe we also mention creature, but if it says creature, it's gonna be... We might not find... Ooh. Oh, I love talking about this card. It's not good. It really isn't. But I'm a sucker for Kamigawa anyways, so that which was taken is a 5-mana artifact. For 4 mana and tapping it, you get to put a divinity counter on target permanent other than that which was taken. And each permanent with a divinity counter on it is indestructible. So you just activate this once, and until this artifact is destroyed, your commander is indestructible. Might not be the best for your Skullbriar deck, because again, like, you don't care that much if your commander is dead or not. But it's a really fun card, and Commander is the place where cards that are fun rather than good. Tyrant's Sanctum plays a different role. It's a land, so opportunity cost is even lower. Tap and pay 2. Target legendary creature becomes a god in addition to its other types. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. And for 4 and tap and sacrificing the Sanctum, put a indestructible counter on target god. That is kind of perfect. That's gonna be that. Indestructible counters. People might point out other useful counters, but nothing comes to mind right now. I assume stuff like flying counters and vigilance counters exist, but maybe in different colors. And let's look at your 2 suggestions then. And then I think I'm going to end today's stream. And for the next stream, I'm going to prepare like a better layout that makes it easier to follow. And we still have some stuff to talk about then. Okay, I can already see like... What you bring up is very interesting, by the way. There might be something more. Okay, so let's I'm gonna add the tags and let's read Scavenge Brawler, and then I'm gonna talk about what just came to mind. Flying Vigilance, Trample Lifelink, exile this. Choose target creature, put 4 +1/+1 counters. A flying counter, a vigilance, yeah. I mean, perfect suggestion. My idea was to look at maybe there's a dinosaur from the Jurassic Park set that cares about counters. And maybe that card or that card's EDH rec page has some more good cards. Scavenge Brawler, perfect suggestion, and then Gift of the Viper. That I've never heard about. Gift of the Viper. I mean, I've probably seen it before. I just completely forgot what it was and existed. Yeah, Death Touch counter, a Reach counter, and a Death Touch counter. Yes. Thank you for the suggestions. To round this selection out, do we need to talk about stuff that exiles our commander from the graveyard, should it ever be in a graveyard, for some great benefit? Kind of the other way around. Let's say we have a Skullbriar, a huge Skullbriar in our graveyard. And we have creatures that become copies of something in the graveyard, including like their keywords or their counters. Is that something we can work with? My first thought was Soul Flayer, but a lifelink counter doesn't give the creature lifelink, so it might not work. But let's look for Delve real quick. I might find something else. Blah, blah, blah. Bunch of Delve cards. There's Hogak, the Gak. I love the future frame, by the way. It just cares, yeah, like... Unfortunately, Soul Flayer itself doesn't work, but there might be something similar, and maybe I'm actually gonna look at the EDH rec page here. Skullbriar, the Walking Grave. Such a cool design, by the way. Again, it might not play well. I'm really not sure if these hyper aggressive Voltron decks play well. Let's see in a bit. But for sure, deck building for them is so fun. Yeah, Unexpected Fangs, lifelink counter on a creature. Let's talk about that. Unexpected Fangs. Perfect card for this deck. Hexproof counter. Yes, I remember this card. Slippery Bogbonder. Slippery Bogbonder. So a card that adds a hexproof counter to Skullbriar, making it even harder to kill. But that's all like the same type of thinking, same type of Oracle search also. What I'm trying to find is if people found a way to do the opposite of Scavenged Brawler. Oof. Quasi Revenant. Well, you're going in. Quasi Revenant. Exile this card from your graveyard, put a flying, a death touch, and a lifelink counter on target creature. This solves a lot of issues at the same time. Death touch, not that relevant if you don't also have trample. But flying counter is evasion, which is great for Voltron. And then lifelink helps you stay on the aggressive because nobody can race you. But it seems like so far the death touch counter, at least up here, no one had the same thoughts. Exile, become a copy, or exile, like gain power. Funnily enough, I think I know what I'm gonna do. There is one card that takes advantage of a creature's power in the graveyard. And it is, well, like what I mentioned before. It is, sorry, I have them up here already. Yes. Let's add all of these to Skull. I'm thinking of Varel's the Scar Striped. Eater of Virtue, we're going to take a look at. Probably. You probably have a good idea. This is the card I talked about. It gives all creature cards in your graveyard Scavenge, where Scavenge is their mana cost. You can sacrifice a creature to regenerate this guy. What you can do is, if you have enough mana and are not afraid, you can let Skullbriar go to the graveyard and then scavenge it away. You benefit from its power, because even in a graveyard, the power is going to be determined by its base power plus +1/+1 counters. And then it just goes to the command zone and you cast it from the command zone again. So this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to add this guy to Skull, and that stands as the card for the idea that I have. And then Eater of Virtue, probably very similar. But no, I think this doesn't work, right? Whenever a equipped creature dies, exile it. As long as a card exiled with Eater of Virtue has flying, true for first strike, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. The idea is similar, but I think this case it doesn't work right, because as a replacement effect, you're not going to have Skullbriar underneath Eater of Virtue. I was thinking of cards that maybe enter with a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the power of the creature card they exiled from the graveyard or something like this. But we covered that with Varels. Yeah. This embodies the idea of having Skullbriar in your graveyard as a very large creature and somehow benefiting from that. Eater of Virtue, I think, would work with a lot of different cards, but specifically not with Skullbriar, unless I'm making like an obvious rules mistake here. Because again, it's not going to be exiled with the Eater of Virtue. It's going to be in the command zone as a replacement effect. Okay. I mean, look at this. What the hell? This might be the most cards ever under like commander tag. It just goes to show that like I mean lots of these are double, and I'm not gonna mention all of these, like Void Beckoner and Titaneth Rex are the same card for the purpose of a video. Like all of these hardened scales, Ozolith, all of these are the same card, yes, but still, I think we managed to showcase a lot of facets of Skullbriar, and that's the goal. All right. But I think that does it for today. I don't think I have it in me to go through the last 9 commanders. 9 commanders is at least going to be 1.5 hours or 2 hours even. That's another stream in its entirety. Again, super happy. Just goes to show, like, yesterday it was someone else. Today it's you being super active in chat. And just one person. Just one other person you talk to about your decks, about your ideas, can add so much value. Like the Cauldron of Souls, so many good cards you suggested. That's exactly why I'm doing this live. Just makes a whole bunch of sense. Okay, nonetheless, that's it for today. I'm gonna announce the next stream. The latest, it's gonna be next Monday. Probably next Monday. But we'll see. There will be like a notification on my YouTube channel. Thanks for the suggestions. And wherever you are, whatever you do, have a nice day. See you guys around.